India is now the world's fastest growing big economy. Over the last decade, it has managed to surpass Canada, Brazil, Italy, Russia, France, and the UK in size, rising from number 11 in the world to number 5. India isn't stopping there. By 2025 to 26, India will rival number 4 Germany, whose GDP exceeded $4 trillion in 2021, and surpassed Japan with almost $5 trillion of GDP as the third largest economy by 2027. According to S&P Global, India's real income per capita is projected to achieve significant average growth of 5.3%, with Indian households becoming the biggest spenders among G20 economies. After comprehensive economic reforms were implemented in 1991, India saw a marked acceleration in economic growth. However, India's economy has grown at a slower rate than that of China because China introduced economic reforms in 1978, 13 years before India. World Bank data show that China's per capita GDP in terms of purchasing power parity was lower than that of India before 1991. China's accelerated growth rate surpassed that of India in 1992, and the gap between the two countries has widened since then. China's model of economic growth has essentially been based on intense industrialization, but the era of open globalization that China exploited in the 1990s and 2000s is over. According to Goldman Sachs, India will not surpass China in the near future, but it will become the world's second largest economy by 2075. In 1700, India had the world's largest economy, even bigger than China's. However, during the colonial period, its share of the global economy decreased. In 1993, after a financial crisis, India's share of the world economy dropped to a lowly 1% when measured using market exchange rates. Now, India's contribution to global GDP has increased to 3.6%, similar to where China stood in 2000. India's influence is growing in other ways too. Its stock market ranks 4th in the world, trailing only behind the United States, China, and Japan. Additionally, its annual exports of goods and services compared to its GDP are at nearly all-time high levels. Over the past decade, they've grown by an impressive 73%, causing India's share of global exports to rise from 1.9% in 2012 to 2.4% in 2022. India is a predominantly domestic demand-driven economy when compared to many other Asian economies such as China, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand, which rely more on exports. India's growth until now has been mainly driven by domestic consumption as the main driver, around 55 to 60% of the overall economy, plus domestic investments, especially on infrastructure. In the 1960s, the United States and, in 2000, China had population demographics similar to those of India today, with a consumption share also close to India's current level, at around 60%. The per capita income at purchasing power parity in the US in 1960 was $10,000, while in China in 2000 it was $3,000, compared to India's per capita income of $9,000 in 2023. China's growth model primarily relies on exports and investments, which allowed it to achieve an impressive annual average growth rate of 10.5% per annum between 2001 and 2010. However, studies have found that this model is unsustainable and unbalanced in the long run. But why? Let's understand with a simple example. Imagine a country called Toyland that decides to focus on an export-oriented growth model by heavily investing in the production of toys for other countries. Here's why this approach can become unsustainable and unbalanced over time. Toyland's economy becomes highly dependent on the demand for toys in other countries. If there's an economic downturn in those countries, or if their preferences shift away from Toyland's toys, Toyland's economy will suffer. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket. In the economy, consumer decisions regarding what to buy, how much to buy, and when to buy from the wide array of goods and services available today serve not only to fulfill their own needs, but also determine the quantity and types of goods and services that will ultimately be produced. The production of these goods and services, in turn, generates jobs across all sectors of the economy. Since 1970, consumption has become a dominant force in the US economy, with consumer spending accounting for 68% of GDP in 2023. This is one of the reasons why the US has avoided a recession, unlike some European countries. If the consumers continue to spend, it will prevent the economy from entering a recession. India's consumer market also holds significant long-term potential. Over the next 2 decades, the Indian market is expected to undergo a major transformation, and its income levels are projected to almost triple. India's new growth pattern is the emergence of a single national market, in which more firms and consumers are utilizing the modern financial system and benefiting from the booming service sector. The structure of India's financial sector has evolved over the last few decades. While banks, especially public sector banks, PSBs, continue to dominate, private sector banks and non-banking financial companies, NBFCs, are playing an increasingly prominent role. Transport infrastructure has been improving dramatically. In the last 10 years, the length of the road network has increased by about 25%, and adding 10,000 kilometers of highway each year. The number of airports has doubled, and many of the new ones rival the sleekest in the rich world. However, despite increased investment in transportation infrastructure, the overall investment share of GDP has been declining since the financial crisis. The main reason appears to be less quantifiable: a general lack of confidence in the way the Indian economy is being managed. Both consumer and business confidence indices fell during the financial crisis, but now both have increased, indicating growing confidence in the economy. The one area India is beating the world is its digital payment system. The Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, is a platform that allows free and fast account-to-account transfers using fintech apps such as PhonePe or Google Pay. UPI is drawing attention from across the world. It processed over $1 trillion in transactions in 2022, equivalent to a third of India's GDP. The Indian model is serving as an inspiration for others. Brazil's Pix, which facilitates bank-to-bank payments with a small fee, was launched in November 2020 and now accounts for approximately 30% of Brazil's electronic payments. Credit and debit cards each account for around 20%. Digital forms of currency have long been a source of progress in emerging markets. In 2007, M-Pesa, a mobile money service, was launched in Kenya by the telecoms giant Safaricom. Users hand over cash to designated agents to top up an account linked to their phone's SIM card. Payments are sent via SMS to friends, family, or retailers. M-Pesa is now used by over 90% of Kenyan households, making it much easier than before to send money to relatives over long distances. When money can be moved with less friction, consumer spending tends to increase. Academic estimates suggest that M-Pesa has reduced extreme poverty in Kenya by at least 2%. To put India's digital growth into context, this chart illustrates digital adoption amongst 17 mature and emerging economies, and India is digitizing faster than all of them except Indonesia. India's score has risen by 90% since 2014. However, in absolute terms, its score is still low, at 32 on a scale of 100, indicating that there is ample room for further growth. The benefits of digital infrastructure play a more significant role in emerging economies. According to the OECD, the digital economy can be harnessed for inclusive and sustainable growth. Digital technologies make life easier for citizens and consumers, increase the productivity of workers and firms, and help governments extend key services to those who need them the most. India's GDP has expanded by 78% over the past decade, with the service sector dominating at 48%. India's reliance on services is notably high for a developing economy, with services also dominating its exports, accounting for about 40% of all exports. This makes India the world's 7th largest exporter of services, contributing 4.5% to the global total, up from 3.2% a decade ago. Companies worldwide have been outsourcing services like software development, customer service, and business process outsourcing to India since the early days of the internet. However, the challenge lies in the fact that the IT services industry, despite earning a substantial $200 billion or so in export revenues, directly employs only around 5 million people. Out of a total working-age population of over 900 million, only about half are part of the labor force, and perhaps around 60 million have formal jobs. One potential solution to this issue would be to generate more blue-collar employment by promoting manufacturing. India has long dreamed of becoming a factory for the world. However, the share of manufacturing in its total output has remained stagnant at around 17 to 18% over the past decade, and now it is at an all-time low. While certain segments of manufacturing are thriving, such as the export of pharmaceutical, electrical machinery, and vehicles, which has seen a 63% increase in the past 5 years, The government's Make in India program was originally designed to enhance the tradable aspect of the economy by promoting the production of goods for export, not just for the domestic market. However, instead of leaning into this export-oriented approach, India is increasingly adopting protectionist measures like import substitution and subsidizing domestic production, often infused with nationalist sentiments. These policies aim to shield domestic industries and conglomerates from global competition. Unfortunately, these tariff policies are hindering India's ability to enhance its competitiveness in the global goods export market, and its reluctance to participate in regional trade agreements is impeding its full integration into global value and supply chains. However, there will still be significant opportunities for investing in value-creating businesses and job creation. Large companies with substantial cash flows are actively pursuing this change. Among these ambitious giants are conglomerates like Adani in energy and transport, Reliance Industries in telecoms, chemicals, energy and retail, Tata in IT, retail, energy and automobiles, and more focused giants like JSW, primarily in steel. These four firms alone have plans to invest over $250 billion in infrastructure and emerging industries over the next 5 to 8 years, with the aim of developing local supply chains aligning with government objectives. Some may argue that if these firms accumulate even more economic power through their investments, it could lead to excessive corporate power, monopolies, and in some cases, cronyism. At the moment, though, the ratio of those four firms' profits to national GDP is 0.7%. Half the equivalent ratio for the four tech giants, which are currently America's biggest companies. The government seems happy with big business, given its high reinvestment rates, which ultimately contributes to achieving economic growth. India's economic growth is undeniably improving physical capital, which includes tangible man-made goods that support production, such as inventory, cash, infrastructure, and real estate. However, is this growth also leading to improvements in human capital, which are arguably even more crucial? Now, India is poised to overtake China to become the world's most populous country. Its burgeoning population could be a double-edged sword. As the rich world and China grow older, India's massive young population, with around 500 million people under 20, should give it an extra boost to its economic growth. However, despite an educated elite earning numerous qualifications, a significant portion of India's population still lacks access to quality education. The prospect of unskilled and unemployed young individuals could potentially slow down India's economic progress. India has made some strides in improving the provision of services to poor people. Government digital schemes have simplified access to banking and the distribution of welfare payments. However, concerning education, India allocates only 2.9% of its GDP, a figure below international standards. India faces the daunting challenge of quality education and skilling up its workforce, while creating sufficient employment opportunities for the millions entering the job market every year, a challenge at which it is currently failing. The unemployment rate has been hovering around 7% to 8%, up from approximately 5% 5 years ago. Unemployment has been one of the most significant challenges for the Indian economy over the past 2 decades, and it shows no signs of improvement. Not everyone shares the same pessimism. As companies explore diversifying their businesses and investments beyond China, India is well positioned to seize the opportunity. China's rapid aging is evident, with the proportion of its population above the age of 60 projected to increase from the current 20% to 30% by 2035. Vietnam, which has emerged as a manufacturing hub in recent years, is also experiencing a swift aging process. India, on the other hand, has a slightly higher percentage of its population in the 15 to 64 age group compared to the Philippines, another nation long considered a potential contender for a slice of China's manufacturing industry. India is actively developing its infrastructure, including roads, tech campuses, airports, and factories. However, it also needs to invest in building up its human capital. With effective leadership, India has the potential to follow suit. To achieve this, India should allocate more resources to education and healthcare to enhance people's quality of life. India currently ranks 132nd out of 191 countries on the Human Development Index, placing it below countries like Sri Lanka, China, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. Nonetheless, improved governance, technology, and reduced corruption can lead to better education and a more productive workforce, ultimately resulting in an improved standard of living. The Indian economy is robust and likely sustainable, and its rise is real, though not without its challenges.